Hey guys, welcome to Lean to the Left. Today we're delighted to present Monica Mohindra, Acting Director of the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. We're a little late for Veterans Day, but then we need to be celebrating and honoring our veterans every day of the year. Monica is the wife of a Navy veteran who comes from a long line of veterans and is dedicated to sharing and preserving for future generations the stories of those who have served in our military, including women. You know, women have served in uniform in all branches of the military since World War II, from nurses to code breakers to pilots, surgeons to mechanics to frontline warriors, and everything in between. Women veterans have done it all. So, Monica, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much for having us.
I'm delighted. Hey, this is a tough question. I don't think you'll be able to answer it, but can you tell us what the Veterans History Project is all about and how it got started?
Absolutely. Well, honestly, the Veterans History Project is all about you. It's all about individuals who will sit down with the veterans in their lives and their communities, interview them, gather their first person stories, and follow archival procedures with the seriousness of purpose to donate those first person narratives to the Library of Congress. Those veterans in their lives and communities are US veterans who served from World War I through the recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the idea really was sort of an idea that lots of people had at about the same time, way back, if you can cast your mind to the early 2000s, there was a lot of focus at that time on our World War II generation, with the anniversaries and milestones and commemorative dates coming to the forefront at that time. And it was put into place then by Congress. Obviously, it was something that made a sense to a lot of people because there were efforts similar to it all across the country. But the idea in the legislation was really to get individuals together around this idea of our nation's memory, that first person lived experience, and have them work collectively with the veterans in their lives so that that cycle of understanding starts with that first point of contact to the interviewer, and then grows when it comes to the Library of Congress, and then grows again when it's used by individuals who use the resources of the Library of Congress. So what makes the Veterans History Project unique isn't just that it was started by Congress or just that it's in the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. It is unique because the idea was really to not send professionals like yourself. It wasn't supposed to be journalists. It wasn't supposed to be oral historians or folklorists, but getting folks involved firsthand with these conversations, using archival principles and having it be available and accessible to anyone who wanted to use them. And the collections not only range from those conflicts, but there is in the over 112,000 individual veteran stories that we have, there is representation from every district, every state, and even the territories of the United States.
Wow. So that means I could have a side hustle and doing interviews of veterans for you guys, right?
Well, hustle implies not the
Pay.
volunteer spirit.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding.
But yes, absolutely. I mean, the idea that has been propagated a lot that makes a lot of sense is that there's this divide between those who serve and those who don't serve, and that the service number is so small, 1 or 2%, depending on what you hear. But I have another statistic for you, and this is why it could be a side effort of yours, is that, according to Pew Research surveys a few years ago, they indicated through a telephone survey that 62% of the American public is immediately related to somebody who served. Now, that immediately related is an interesting designation. And the way that they sliced that data was to say that if it was a person who served who was a parent, spouse, sibling, adult child, or grandparent of the individual. That's immediate relations. Well, I don't know about you, but my immediate relations, the people I count when I look around the Thanksgiving table, are aunts and uncles, their godparents, their family members that are chosen family members, their designations that are immediate to me. So when you start looking at that number 62% and you put that narrow focus on it, and then you start thinking about who is in your life, who do you love, who's your family, that number gets a lot bigger, a lot quicker. I don't have the data to support it, but I have the intuition to support it. So it is about you and your ability to turn this into an effort, and any one of your listeners, because there are veterans in your everyday life that you may not even be aware are veterans. And that is often the case with women. There's probably a woman veteran in your life that you've never thought to ask. No slight to you. I know you're a journalist with integrity who likes asking questions, but to sit down with the seriousness of purpose and say, hey, I want to know what it sounded like, what it felt like, what the food tasted like, how you kept in touch with people. To that woman veteran in your life, this is a really great opportunity for that.
Okay, well, I am going to take you up on this.
Good.
In the first place, whether my audience cares about this or not, I don't care. I'm going to tell you anyway. My father served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam. He first served in World War II as an enlisted person. He was a flight mechanic on bombers. And then in Korea, he was a chaplain. And in Vietnam, he was a chaplain. And so I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
So I also have a friend who is an Indian chief here in South Carolina. His name is Buster Hatcher. Buster's not his real name, it's his nickname. But he is, he has a Purple Heart. He was wounded in Vietnam, and he's married to a woman who also served. So I've got some stories for you. So, all right. Now, what is now included at the Veterans History Project? What do you have there now?
We have over 112,000 individual first-person narratives. And it's wonderful to hear you talk about chaplains, because one of the things that has been a huge effort since the very beginning, 21 years ago, was to ensure that the collections told the full story, reflected the full story of first-person experience with America in conflict, and chaplains are a huge part of that. It's wonderful to hear you talk about Native American participation. Many statistics will tell you that Native Americans, as a slice of minority experience, have the largest percentage of the population which does choose to serve, and is also an often under-recognized voice, not just in the Veterans History Project collections, which is something we're working on, but throughout the United States. So to have you talk about those and highlight those stories gives me an opportunity to talk about how you can access more of those stories on our website. Of those 112,000 individual collections on our website, which is www.loc, as in Library of Congress.gov, as in government, /vets, as in veterans, there you can find a really granular and robust self-serve database where you can put in things like woman, you can put in things like all three of those conflicts, you can put in even, a state name, and try to find people who had similar slices of experience. Over 70% of those collections that we already have offer some form of digitized material on our website, which is to say that not the full interview or the full photographs and letters are available for every individual. Digitization is an ongoing and difficult process, but we do offer something. That's a lot of data to mine and a lot of personal stories to connect with. We have 73 different thematically connected, curated episodes, if you will, collections of veterans' experience around themes such as Native Americans in service, helicopter service, the arts. There's a really terrific one that might interest you personally about chaplains and chaplains service. And that was a focus of ours, continues to be, to make sure that we have unusual duty areas and service points represented in the collection, including, as appropriate, the Merchant Marine, including the Coast Guard. There are all these folks who aren't necessarily thought of when you say veteran, US veteran. Lots of people have an image they bring straight to their mind. What I love about what we can offer through these existing collections is an opportunity to understand more. Also through the website, you will find easy links and a way to get yourself on the list for our blog and for our social media posts. And our amazing reference people and communication folks are mining the collections every day and pumping out wonderful little snippets of experience of US veterans. We also offer reference and research services, and you don't have to be, you neither have to be a documentarian or professional like you to conduct these interviews. Anyone can conduct them. You can find that information also on the website. You neither have to be a professional to conduct the interviews, nor do you have to be a professional to research in the interviews. In fact, some of the most sort of heartwarming and deep connection to the reference services and the collections that we already have are from individuals looking to understand more about their family and their family's experience by connecting to existing collections. So there's just a wealth that's already there, which is not for us to sit on our laurels as a nation. There are 19 million living US war veterans, many women among them, about 10% are women. And so the website also offers an opportunity for learning how to conduct and create these interviews. There's a quick 15-minute video. And for organizations, we also offer workshops if they're willing to host them. And we're happy to talk to folks about that too.
Oh, well, that's interesting. How large of a group would you need for a workshop?
Because we're paying for a professional oral historian or folklorist in order to make sure we're doing right by, funds.
Sure.
It has to be a minimum of 25 people voluntarily participating to conduct these interviews. So normally that goes through congressional offices and organizations like a DAR, an American Legion, a VA facility, something like that.
Okay. Well, that is good to know. I'm connected with some organizations that might be interested in participating. So you're reaching out to veterans, asking them to share their stories. You're looking for audio and video recordings. I'm sure you're looking for letters, memoirs, Dear John letters, I bet you.
There's been some great research into the Dear John letters for sure. Absolutely. The way to tell this first person narrative, there are 3 buckets of participation. The focus has always been oral history. In fact, when the project was founded, it was called the Veterans Oral History Project, not just the Veterans History Project, but an enriching way to really have a deeper understanding of certain collections, or unfortunately, in some cases, the only way to have a window into that first person experience is through the letters and photographs that remain. So the other minimum buckets of participation are 10 or more original photographs or letters from the veteran's perspective, or 20 or more pages of diary, journal, memoir, that sort of thing. There are other enriching ways, and all of the extra details about how you can participate are on the website. The minimum for the audio or video interview is 30 minutes. So once you meet any one of those buckets, the more you can meet in any one of those buckets, but once you meet one of those, you've created a collection. And then that collection remains open, and individuals can continue to contribute to it weekly, monthly, annually. We have families who have chosen particular sort of commemorative days to them, whether it's a birthday or a death date or an anniversary of some kind, where they then contribute more each year around that date as a way to commemorate that date, or sometimes visit the library to see the collection on that date as a way to commemorate that date. So these are opportunities to make an existing collection more rich and more useful. And we're certainly interested in anything that is two-dimensional, but we are a library, not a museum. So things like weapons, medals, uniforms, those are better somewhere else.
Okay. So in other words, if I submit some material about my dad, my brother could look at it and say, well, I don't remember him talking about it like that. Here's what I remember. And my sister could chime in, right? Is that right? Everyone could be involved?
So anyone can be involved, and that's part of the beauty. You're describing exactly why oral history is so useful. You know, there are veterans who participated, for instance, you mentioned Vietnam, there are veterans who participated in Tet. And one will tell you one thing happened, another will tell you something else happened, another will say, you know, I was there. And when I came back, I heard what the media was saying, and that is not what I experienced. This is the veterans' opportunity to share their perspective. And we're not looking for, you know, the historical, what would go in a textbook. Here's the place name, here's the date of the battle, and it took place between this time and this time. We are looking for the lived experience. Sometimes those battles and place names, you know, the names changed afterwards, or in the heat of the moment, those details are one thing, and then on reflection, they're something else.
Sure.
What doesn't change is that human experience, what that individual felt and saw and heard, and the reality of their experience. And it's in the multiple viewpoints, even in a family setting. You have siblings. If you're blessed with siblings, you probably understand that. But even in a family setting, it's not that one perspective is the true perspective. It's that the multiplicity of perspectives create the rich understanding of the family life. And that's the same thing with the collections. So yes, anyone can participate.
So it
You
sounds
have
like
letters that were sent to you. Those are important. You want to capture those in a collection, you do that. Your sister maybe was fortunate to have an audio interview, maybe that she did as part of something, you know, one year, and it meets the minimum requirement, and she wants to contribute that, she can contribute that. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think this would be a big help to families too, when they're right.
We have some wonderful stories of how families have really connected around the Veterans History Project. One of my favorites is the story of a World War I diary that we got. And through participation in the Veterans History Project and a little bit of a back and forth with the staff here at the Library of Congress, we had a little deeper of a conversation with the woman who originally submitted the collection. It turned out then, I don't know if it was Thanksgiving, but there was a meal, and her son was there with his fiance. And so at this point, we're talking great grandson and his fiance found out at the dinner table, because they were talking about the Veterans History Project and pursuing this legacy collection, that their great grandfathers had both served in the same unit during World War I. And that was a family connection they had never expected, didn't know existed. And it came about because of this conversation. We have other, obviously, more poignant stories about connecting families, and some lovely ones where collections, that there's a fabulous series on the blog actually about George Piercy, if you get a chance to look that up, or I can send you the link, where because his family, his nephews contributed his collection to us. He passed away during World War II, but he had an impeccable series of diaries and journals. He was a POW in the Pacific Theater. And because he sent those to us, and we were able to really get those out in front of the public, the family members of those that he served with who had other parts of that story found out about us and then contributed their part of the story. And now those two families are connected, 80 years later. So yes, it is a wonderful thing. It can be a wonderful thing for families. If I can ramble on for one more second,
Yeah,
I'll tell
sure.
you too, because to your point about not just taking the interviews, but also taking these details, ephemera, if you will, the letters and the photographs, we do require the originals because it is the Library of Congress and researchers are going to be using these. We have found that some families have sent us thank you notes because what it did was it sort of pushed the moment where they did that family business of taking stock of what these elements were, digitizing them for all the family members. So now you have a level playing field. Everyone has a beautiful digitized keepsake that they created themselves, and they've submitted the original to the library where it serves this higher purpose. And for families that have lost a loved one where they're contributing something like this, that thank you notes really focus on the ability to have served a collective purpose together and to have avoided, or even in some cases healed, a rift that was occurring because one person had, as you say, these letters, somebody else had those photographs, somebody else
Sure,
had the diary.
sure.
And so it avoided that discord, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah. While you've been talking, I've been wondering about veterans who are suffering from PTSD or other issues that are related to their service. Is there any way that is also being dealt with in this project?
I have to be careful how I answer this question because we're not mental health professionals or medical health professionals. That's not our role. So I want to be clear about that. But I will say what we've heard, the feedback we've gotten over the years and the panel discussions we've been able to hold to put attention on PTS, on MST, on other traumas as a result of conflict and war. For instance, the moral injury of war, these kinds of conversations, the feedback we're hearing is that participating in the Veterans History Project, both for the veterans and then for their family members and loved ones, enables a beginning of that process of healing or enhances, enriches the process of healing for them from their own words, from what they're telling us. I'm not saying you will be healed from participating. You won't necessarily be healed in PTS, but what we're hearing is that folks find a great comfort and relief in it. And I like to think about that quote from Maya Angelou that talks about, there is no greater burden than a story that goes untold. And I think what the project offers is a vehicle for a serious conversation. When I sit down and ask, my cousin about her service, I'm not asking for a fishtail. I'm not asking to be entertained. I'm not going to do it at the bar. I'm going to sit down with her in a place she feels comfortable. And I'm going to tell her it's going to the Library of Congress and why we want it. And when you insert that level of seriousness of purpose into the conversation, I think it really lends itself to this notion of being able to unburden yourself from that story that maybe you've been holding on to. So anecdotally, we have heard that it can be really useful to veterans and to their family members.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So the project is open to the public. People can come by if they want to and visit in person, right?
They can. It's time ticketed entry right now due to COVID, and you have to follow all the health and safety protocols, but you can make an appointment, become a reader at the Library of Congress and come in and see these collections. The website also offers just unparalleled access to the collections and all the different ways that we provide the information. So yes, the public is welcome. And you raise a good point there too, because I think so often when we say, for research use and for the future and for posterity and the Library of Congress, we forget that it's actually being used today. Right now, history is happening, and that includes this moment. And so there are folks who are using the collections right now for everything from, there was an exhibit at the Hague. There was an exhibit at the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. It's from exhibits to documentary films, students using it to, there's a great story of a fifth grade class in Alaska, using it for document discovery and understanding how documents work and letters coming in the mail and that sort of thing, to somebody doing postdoctoral research on women serving in the Korean War, mostly as nurses, and what their experience of desegregation was and how they felt about desegregation. So it's being used all the time. And that's a really big part of how this is a living legacy. It's not just that you put it on some dusty shelf that you might, see a concept of in a movie, but it's actually being used every day.
Okay, that's wonderful news. All right, Monica, is there anything else you'd like to add as we close this up?
Then I'm looking forward to hearing the interviews you do for us.
Okay.
I really am looking forward to that. And I hope you'll be in touch with us about it. We'd love to that donation.
Thank you so much. I think my first effort might be the Indian chief that I told you about.
And his wife.
And his wife, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Monica. I appreciate you joining us today on Lean to the Left.
You're so welcome. I appreciate you having us.